My name is Melanie Shaw, and the day my grandmother disinherited me at Sunday dinner, I had just finished briefing the Joint Chiefs on a classified operation in the South China Sea. I was 41 years old, a commander in the United States Navy, and I'd spent the last 8 months leading a naval intelligence unit aboard the USS Ronald Reagan. But to my family, I was still just Mel, the girl with the scarred face, the one who never quite recovered from the house fire. The fire happened when I was 12. My cousin Brandon, 3 years older and showing off with his father's lighter, accidentally set the curtains ablaze in my grandmother's guest room. I was the one who ran back inside to grab my little sister. I got her out, but not before a falling beam caught me across the left side of my face, leaving burns that healed into thick, ropey scars running from my temple to my jawline. My left ear was partially melted, requiring reconstruction. The skin on my neck was puckered and discolored. Brandon walked away without a scratch. And somehow, in the twisted logic of my family, that made him the hero and me the tragedy. My grandmother, Margaret Caldwell, was the matriarch of a textile fortune built over 3 generations. She had clear ideas about appearance, propriety, and what made someone worthy of carrying on the family name. Brandon fit that image perfectly. Tall, handsome, charismatic, with an MBA from Duke and a vice president position at the family company. He looked good in photographs. He made the right impression at country club events. I did not. It's such a shame. I had heard her whisper to her sister at a family gathering when I was 16. She was such a pretty girl before. Now she'll have to make her way on other qualities. Those other qualities led me to the Naval Academy. I graduated with honors, went into naval intelligence, and spent the next 2 decades proving that what I looked like had nothing to do with what I could accomplish. I'd served on 4 different carriers, earned 2 Bronze Stars, and been promoted to commander at 37, ahead of schedule and ahead of most of my peers. But my grandmother never asked about any of it. When I came home on leave, she'd introduce me vaguely as Melanie, who's in the military, then quickly redirect conversation to Brandon's latest business triumph or his perfect wife Ashley or their perfect children who attended the perfect private school. My mother tried to bridge the gap, but she was the youngest daughter, powerless against my grandmother's iron will. "Just smile and nod," she'd tell me before family dinners. "You know how mother is. Don't make waves." I didn't make waves. I attended the obligatory gatherings, sat quietly while Brandon held court, and left as soon as politeness allowed. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd built a life that didn't need their validation. But it mattered. God help me, it mattered. The Sunday dinner that changed everything happened in June, at my grandmother's estate in Charlotte. She'd called a, quote, family meeting, which usually meant she was about to announce some new charitable initiative or criticize someone's life choices. 23 of us gathered in her formal dining room, the one with the crystal chandelier and the portrait of my great-grandfather scowling down from above the fireplace. I'd flown in from San Diego that morning, exhausted from a red-eye flight and a week of 18-hour days. I was still on Pacific time, my body screaming for sleep, but I'd promised my mother I'd be there. Brandon sat at my grandmother's right hand, as always. Ashley beside him, perfectly coiffed and smiling. Their 3 children were models of deportment, the eldest already accepted to Duke. My Uncle James, who ran the business side of the family company, sat across from them with his wife. Various cousins, second cousins, and spouses filled out the remaining seats. I was placed near the far end of the table, next to a cousin's new boyfriend who kept asking me what I did, then looking confused when I tried to explain naval intelligence. "So like, computers?" he'd said. "You work with computers?" Among other things, I'd replied, too tired to elaborate. Dinner was served. My grandmother insisted on formal service, with courses brought out by her longtime staff, and conversation flowed around me. Brandon talked about a new manufacturing deal he'd secured. Ashley discussed the children's summer plans, tennis camp, leadership seminars, a service trip to Costa Rica that cost more than most families, annual income. Nobody asked about my work. Nobody ever did. Coffee was being served when my grandmother tapped her knife against her crystal water glass. The sound cut through conversation like a blade. "I've asked you all here for an important announcement," she said, her voice clear and commanding despite her 82 years. I've been reviewing my estate planning and I want to make my intentions clear while I'm still here to explain them. The room fell silent. Money had a way of capturing attention in my family. As you know, the bulk of my estate consists of shares in Caldwell Textiles, the property holdings, and various trusts and investments. I've decided how these assets will be distributed. She paused, letting the tension build. My grandmother had always had a flair for drama. Brandon will receive controlling interest in the company, she continued. He's proven himself a worthy steward of the family legacy. He understands business, he understands our position in this community, and he represents the Caldwell name with distinction. Brandon inclined his head modestly, but I saw the satisfaction in his eyes. The primary residence will also pass to Brandon and Ashley, along with the associated trust to maintain it. I'm confident they'll preserve it for future generations. My mother's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. I knew what was coming. The rest of you will receive various bequests. Specifics are in the formal documents, of course, but I want to address one matter directly. Her gaze swept the table and landed on me. Melanie, I'm afraid I've decided not to include you in the primary distribution. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt every eye turn toward me, felt the weight of their pity and their judgment, and their secret relief that it wasn't them. Mother? My own mother started, her voice strained. That's not... My grandmother held up one hand. Let me finish, Patricia. This isn't a decision I've made lightly. Melanie has chosen a difficult path. The military is admirable, certainly, but it's not the life we envisioned for a Caldwell. And given her circumstances, she gestured vaguely toward my face. I think it's best if the family legacy passes to those who can properly represent it in social and business settings. Given her circumstances, as if my scars had somehow erased my competence, my achievements, my worth. Brandon looks like a Caldwell, she continued. He carries himself like a Caldwell. He understands what this family represents. Melanie, I'm sorry, but you simply don't fit the image we need to maintain. The silence was crushing. I saw my mother's face, white with shock and fury. I saw my Uncle James look down at his plate, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. I saw Ashley whisper something to Brandon, who shrugged minutely. And I saw Brandon himself, sitting there in his custom suit, looking for all the world like he deserved every penny of a fortune, built by people he'd never met, secured by a fire he'd started. I understand, I said quietly. May I be excused? My grandmother nodded, already turning to discuss details with the estate attorney seated to her left. I pushed back my chair, carefully, quietly, and walked out of that dining room with my head high and my hands steady. I made it to my rental car before the shaking started. I sat there in the circular driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel, and for the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not because of the money. I'd never expected it, never needed it. I had my own career, my own salary, my own life. But because after everything I'd accomplished, after everything I'd sacrificed and earned and proved,